bring the regular council meeting of Crewe Town Council to order, 7 October 2019. Please join with me in the invocation. Join me in the Lord's Prayer, please. Our Father,
who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread. Give us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, the power, and the glory, forever.
please join me in the pledge of allegiance. Pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Please be seated. We'll start out with a public hearing. The Town Council of the Town of Crewe will hold a public hearing on Monday, October 7th, 2019 at 7 p.m. in the conference room at Crewe Library to hear the public comment on the proposed changes to the current town cigarette tax and the current town meals tax. The proposed changes are as follows. The town cigarette tax is currently 22 cents a pack. The proposed change would be an increase to 27 cents a pack. Number two, the current town meals tax is 5% on reported gross sales. It's defined by town ordinance, Town of Crewe. The proposed change would be to increase the meals tax to 6% on reported gross sales as defined by town ordinance, Town of Crewe. Interested persons may appear at the aforementioned time and place to present their views. At this time, is there anyone wishing to speak for or against the cigarette tax? Is there anyone wishing to speak for or against the cigarette tax? Is there anyone present wishing to speak for or against the cigarette tax? Hearing no comments, my next question is there anyone here to speak for or against the proposed reported or the proposed gross sales meals tax increase from 5% to 6%? Is there anyone wishing to speak on the proposed meals tax increase? Is there anyone wishing to speak on the proposed meals tax increase? Hearing no comment, this public hearing is closed. We now have delegations from the public. We have asked Ms. Carolyn Davis from Blackstone to speak to us on the rental ordinance impact in the town of Blackstone. Ms. Davis is a landlord and a realtor and was active in getting this ordinance passed in the town of Blackstone, and she's here to give us her point of view on how it's worked in Blackstone. I've also asked town attorney, or former attorney, town attorney, Larry Williamson to be present. He is a stakeholder, and he represents himself in his companies, I guess, as a landlord. But I wanted you to be here.
I also handed out a list that Ms. Davis also brought. It's the inspection procedures for the town of Blackstone.
Right.
And on the second page, it should be the inspection checklist. Third page is the inspection registration for rental properties. And the last page is based on, I thought that since it was a business, that we could possibly do business tax. But it is in state law where you cannot do business tax. So.
All right, Ms. Davis.
Okay, first of all, I just want to say that I'm here as a property owner and a property manager, and I'm not representing the town of Blackstone in any way in this. I got involved in this because over the years as a realtor, I've been in many properties in and around Blackstone, and I've seen some deplorable conditions that people live under who pay fair market rent. And so I worked, or I campaigned for the town of Blackstone to enforce the ordinances that were already on their code. And then the town asked me and my daughter, who is a property manager, the building inspector, the town manager, and Yvonne Wilson. We were the ones on the committee to put together this inspection program. We didn't want the program to be too invasive or too much of a problem for the property owners, but we did want to ensure that people who were living in safe sanitary conditions. So the first thing we did was we got together and made a checklist of things that we thought should be addressed and things that shouldn't be, like mold and insects in houses. Those things are typically addressed in the lease between the property owner and the tenant. But we advertised a town meeting, and we sent out notices to all of the property owners that we could identify. That was a little difficult to do because, you know, we didn't know everyone that owned rental property, but we found that there is a process of finding that out as the program went forward. So the thing that I see that the town really does need to do is, or that the property owners really need to do, is they need to plan ahead. When their property becomes vacant, this is what we do, when our property becomes vacant, we go ahead and we can determine about how long it's going to take to turn over a property. So we go ahead and go down our checklist and make the necessary repairs that we feel sure that the building inspector is going to be looking for based on the criteria set up in the checklist. We get the utilities turned on as the landlord or the property manager, and the town of Blackstone does allow property owners and landlords to have the utilities turned on for just $20. That's a temporary service. So we have a temporary service installed in the property for $20, and that enables us to get in there and get the work done. Because the utilities do have to be on when the property is inspected. Then we set up our meeting with the building inspector. And this is going to require a little work on the town to have someone accompany that building inspector as the town does. And they help him out by checking out electrical outlets and things like that. Basically what he's looking for is anything that would be a safety hazard. He checks the fuse boxes to make sure there aren't any bad breakers. He checks all the outlets to make sure they're working, the lighting is working. There has to be a working heating system, all the windows open and closed so that if there was a fire, someone could get out of the house easily. There has to be a smoke detector in every bedroom and one in the hall. All the exterior doors have to be open. There has to be a clean path to get out. Railings have to be secure so that you can't lean against them and fall, and no broken or damaged boards outside. He does look for some cosmetic things like the condition of the roof, but mostly it is just safety items that he's looking for. So he comes through, he does his checklist, and then gives us a list of things that we may have missed during our inspection. Then we get those things repaired. He comes back and does his final inspection for free. We get an occupancy certificate that the house is ready to be occupied. When we lease the property, the tenant takes the lease to the town, and this is where there may be a little bit of a disconnect. The person in the town office has to be proactive when they look at this lease to make sure that this property needs to be inspected. And so the lease will have the property owner's name and the tenant's name, and the town will have the certificate there that it's been inspected. I think that there have been times when people have rented houses and not gotten things inspected, but when that person comes in to turn the utilities on, that's the time to catch it. And as a property owner, I don't think that this is one bit of an issue for me. We also manage 150 rentals. So we have a turnover, a big turnover every month in rentals, and we manage it quite well.
Do you have that inspected each time you have a new renter, or is this an annual inspection?
It's a, the house is inspected every 4 years. Once you get an occupancy, it's good for 4 years unless there is a complaint. Once it's inspected, that is good for a year. So if you only had inspected and nobody had moved in for a year, you know, you'd have to have it done again, but it's good for 4 years. On an apartment complex, they only inspect 10% of the apartments. So we manage the loft apartments, there are 25 of them. They inspected 3, and then we're good for 4 years. A duplex, both sides are inspected, and all single families are inspected.
It's been suggested here on council that by having these inspections, it would help us do away with blight. Have you seen any of that indication of that in Blackstone?
I think that it may help do away with blight, but it's also gonna do away with fires, potential fires in properties because of inadequate wiring or overworked circuits and things like that. And, you know, I think that possibly it could do away with blight. I see blight come in when properties aren't managed properly. And when you have a property that has fallen into disrepair and isn't managed, and then you just get a tenant, put a tenant in there with no lease. We've seen property owners who don't even go to the properties before they lease them. They give them a key and say if anything needs to be done, fix it, and we'll take it off the rent. You know, it's a lot of it falls into the responsibility of the property owners, but I say it probably could do away with blight somewhat.
When the building inspector inspects these buildings for the town of Blackstone, he charges a $50 fee for
Right.
inspection. And presumably that $50 fee is passed on to the individuals renting through the landlords for their rent or what have you. If there's a complaint made and the building inspector comes out to inspect, does he still charge a $50 fee?
No,
Okay.
I don't think so. He comes out and, as part of his duty to inspect rental complaints. The $50 inspection fee, we absorb it as property owners, or I guess you could pass it on to the tenants, but we don't. We have our property owners pay that.
I know you don't speak for the town of Blackstone, but, and I'll have to ask them this question, obviously, but do you have any idea, you say that active engagement by town personnel is required?
I think
help
it
in the
is.
inspections?
I think it is because what they are doing is they have someone come with the inspector, and of course, we're there as the property manager, and I would hope that the property owner would be there if they didn't have a property manager, so that they would have firsthand knowledge of what needed to be taken care of. But if they're not there, then the town personnel makes a list and gives it to, could give it to the property owner and say, these are the things you need to do to bring it in compliance.
I'd like to open it up to other members of council. I'm sorry, I was dominating the discussion.
I got lost in the 4-year inspection and the 1 year. What?
If you, if you had your property inspected and for some reason you did not rent it for a year, you'd have to have it re-inspected. But if you rented it straight away, or within that year, if you rented it straight away, you'd have 4 years before it's inspected again.
What would happen, I mean, everybody knows, I am a property owner. All of my properties are occupied. So what happens?
They are inspected once they are not occupied. People, I suppose, don't live there. I mean, some people do live in properties for 10 or 15 years, but once a property becomes vacant, then the inspections are done. That was the only way that we could figure out to do it that wouldn't overwork the building inspectors and the people doing it.
So nothing happens until it becomes vacant.
Unless there is a
Complaint.
I want to commend you for being a responsible and decent property owner and trying to fight to make sure people live in decent conditions. Because we have a lot here that are not.
Our company did our own inspections before this was ever implemented.
Yeah.
And I think that's why they thought we might be able to, help to set up a program.
Yeah.
Mr. Reed, do you have any questions? Mr. Duffy?
Now, they don't have to do, after it becomes vacant, let's say somebody does live there 4 years, they don't have to, they have to get the inspection just before the next tenant moves in, is that correct?
That's right.
Okay.
Yeah, as long as if somebody could, you could get it inspected and somebody could live there 15 years
Yeah,
and you wouldn't have to get it inspected until it became vacant again.
yeah,
And it's basically just to prevent issues like what we had at Pennsylvania Avenue where the firefighters couldn't even get through the building or from
Yeah, the exit was blocked.
what happened in Burkeville this past week with the motel, with electrical. You know, it prevents issues, and like across the street with people living in properties with no heat and unsanitary conditions. And like our firefighter said, people living in houses with exposed wiring sticking out of the wall. I mean, it's.
well, it prevents it before they move in.
Yes.
Once they
So if
move
they're
in,
already in it,
yeah,
they're-
once they move in, if they don't make a complaint, it doesn't fix the problem. I mean, it's, makes it so they move into a good house, but it's not gonna prevent it unless they
Unless they
complain.
Yeah,
To
and
fix
that's
it
up
up,
to
yeah.
that's comes under the cost of doing business and the property managers to police their properties.
Right, I think that most responsible property owners would inspect their own properties before 4 or 5 years.
Yeah,
Just to make sure that things are being done like maintenance to the furnace and leaks and filters changed and things like
Right. Mr. Duffy?
Now, you were talking about re-inspection. It would be any calls on a re-inspection or something like that.
There's
That's if that house has been inspected, correct?
that. Correct.
All right, now if you get a complaint and somebody's been living there 10 years, then it'll be a $50 charge, correct?
If
But
there's
is the town charging anything, sending a town employee over with the building inspector?
the building inspector is required to follow up on complaints. That's not something the town is doing, so they're not sending someone a bill if someone arbitrarily just makes a complaint. But the town is charging, the building inspector's charging $50. The town sends an invoice to the property owner, and they pay it directly to the town of Blackstone.
Well, who set the $50? The county did?
building inspector, yes.
Is there any way you can go up on that? Do they have a agreement with the town, they're only gonna charge $50 for 3 or 4 years?
I don't know. I suppose that the town could, he charges the town $50. What the town chooses to pass on to the property owners, I guess, is their call, but the town just.
But does the town pass anything on to y'all, as far as administrative costs, for using a town employee plus
No. it's
the
just straight
clerical work and all that stuff?
No, just straight $50.
But now what I've researched on this, and this counties, cities and towns and local taxes and fees, since we have no more than 50,000 residents, we can charge up to $30.
Additional to the
Additional.
$50.
Yes.
Anything else, Mr. Knight? Mr. Abel? Mr. Misswick?
Yeah, so these items on the checklist, any one of those, if it's failed, would make the property unsafe for habitation?
If anything fails, you do not get an occupancy. If you just have one item, just say there's no smoke detector in the hall. You can put a smoke detector in right there while he's there if you want to. But he does have to come back and make sure it meets the.
And that revisit is with that no charge.
Sure.
And
But I guess,
within a certain amount of days, correct?
He really doesn't put a limit
He
on
doesn't put a limit.
the time to come back.
I guess my question is, this being a local ordinance, and would any one of these prevent the landlord from renting it anyway?
Yes, well, I'll tell you a situation that I had. I had 2 apartments that were in downtown Blackstone, and each bedroom had to have a window to get in and out. And when this apartment building was built, there was an inside apartment that did not have a window. And so the town council made the call. The town council does have the luxury of making a call on an inspection and saying that we don't see this as an issue, we're gonna go, and they gave me occupancy because they didn't feel like that we needed to put a window that would open into a hallway. So you could make the call if there was something like that.
The check and balance, so they couldn't rent it, Phil, I think would be when they come into town hall to turn on the water, they have to bring a copy of the current lease.
That's it.
And that would send a red flag to the office persons that they failed inspection. Yeah, you know, that's your fail safe.
Okay, thank you.
All right.
How is the property, the landlord protected? They could go in and have working smoke detectors according to all the rules, and the tenant take the batteries out.
Well, that's why the apartment or house is not occupied, so you have a chance to go through and test it.
Well, you know, but we're doing this for fire safety.
But what if the tenant removes it?
But what if the tenant removes it? What if the
After
tenant
they've
locks
got
the door?
Occupancy.
You know,
Well,
I-
your lease should that should be covered in your lease, that if in our lease it's covered that if your smoke detector fails to operate, that you're to notify us immediately. If you notice mold in your property, you're to notify us in writing. And if there are, that your property is insect-free, and if you don't notify us in 10 days that there are insects, then this is your responsibility. So if they did not notify you that the smoke detectors weren't working, they're in violation of their lease, and
so if
You
they,
can
you can't
evict
do
them.
anything about it.
well, I was thinking more on the safety side of it, if
Yeah.
they were injured in a fire.
Have you had tenants not fulfill their obligations and basically leave you a bug infested house?
Oh, yes.
Okay.
That happens when you get in the rental business.
They bring them in too, but, yeah, and so we have every property inspected for insects before we put a tenant in it. Bed bugs, fleas sometimes are harder to detect.
How often do you inspect your property?
We inspect our properties every year.
Every year? So you go around, is that no announcement, you just pop in on?
No, we never go unannounced. We put a notice on their door when they'll be inspected.
Okay.
I imagine something like this also serves to protect landlords because it gives an initial baseline for tenants to move in. So when they move out, if there's something wrong, you know that something happens within that time that those tenants move in.
Correct, and that covers the landlord's butt as well. Because if it's inspected and all of those fire detectors are working, and then something happens, they can't go back on the landlord saying that you didn't provide us fire protection.
We also put a fire extinguisher in the property, but that's not required under this inspection, but it's covered here.
Okay. I've got two landlords in the audience, but I open it up to questions for them. Will you entertain their questions?
You have 3 landlords in.
You're a
I am
landlord here?
2,
In town?
in town.
Okay. Mr. Williamson?
Mr. Davis, how exactly is this initiated in Blackstone? I assume it's not just when the tenant comes in with a lease. How is this process triggered to begin?
The property owners were notified that the properties have to be inspected
Right.
prior. And so what we do, our company does, is that when the property becomes vacant,
Okay,
we go in and inspect it and determine what our turnaround time is gonna be so that
Right.
we can get the things on this list, and then we set up the appointment, usually
Okay.
about 2 weeks out to
Okay.
be inspected.
okay. And is the building inspector, he is the one that's actually doing the inspections, the county building inspector?
He is.
Now, you were talking about people accompanying him. Who's actually accompanying him? Are you or some representative of your firm accompanying, or is it a town official? Who's actually going out with him?
A town official goes out with him, and
Okay.
she makes a list of the things that are.
She's his clerk, so to speak.
Yes, but she's
Okay.
an employee of the town of Blackstone. And
Okay,
of course, I go as the,
Sure.
or our property manager goes.
Sure.
So that we know firsthand when
Sure.
we walk away what we have to do.
And then, especially in the case of maybe somebody who doesn't have a property manager, the clerk goes out, she makes whatever notations, and then what? That comes back to the town office and it's mailed to the landlord? How does that
Yes.
transport? And then the landlord gets it and he contacts you and says, okay, I'm gonna fix these things. Who schedules the next inspection? When
We
does
do-
that happen?
We schedule it as either the property owner or the manager schedules the.
But you gotta do it with the consent of the building inspector, because obviously it can't take place unless he's available and ready to go out there.
Right. But
Okay.
it usually takes place in 2 or 3 days of our
Okay,
request.
okay. And I notice in here, and I'm gonna come to this in a minute, I'm a little confused about this, but it says all scheduled rental inspections shall allow a minimum of 15 days prior to the tenant's move-in date. And of course, it says the property's gotta be clean and so forth. So let's say a tenant leaves, let's say perhaps they leave unexpectedly rather than at the end of the lease term, and you find out the property's vacant for, by whatever means you find out. And you go out there, and of course, at that point, you gotta clean it out, and you gotta notify the town. And you're saying at least 15 days notice you've got to give them. That's what this appears to be saying. And then the inspector comes out, he does his inspection. If he finds anything wrong, of course, then you've gotta fix it, and you've gotta get him out there. So, seems to me there's a potential to lose an entire month's rent here pretty much, real easily.
Sure.
Okay, so considering that you're only receiving rent 12 months of the year, you've just lopped off 1/12 of your yearly income. And you've also paid the town $20 to cut the power on, which I'm glad you mentioned that. I was unaware that they would do that for $20. And of course, you've also paid the building inspector's fee. And of course, if you're the owner and you do go out there, or you have an employee of yours, that's time, especially if it's a paid employee, that's time you're paying the employee to go out there. I don't know what time frame we're talking about. So, you know, if you're getting $500 in rent, which is pretty minimal, I think you'll agree these days here. By the time you lose $500, pay $20 more, pay your employees' expense of going out there, and especially if they have to return subsequently, it's real easy to talk about $600
It could be, yes.
very easily. And of course, if the rent is higher than that, then the number is bigger than that. So we're not talking about an insignificant sum here, are we?
No, we're not.
Okay.
But we try to schedule
Okay.
it so that we
Okay.
can narrow that down. And they're really
Oh, I understand.
responsible.
I understand.
about that now.
But the building inspector is also Nottaway County's full-time building inspector, so he's doing his regular job in addition to performing these other functions currently for the town of Blackstone and potentially for the town of Crewe. So obviously there's going to come a time at some point in time where he's going to be a little pressed to be able to do all of this stuff. Frankly, he's one individual.
Right.
And I'm just wondering, how long is the town of Blackstone going to deploy its resources, whether it's the person who goes out there, or the person who writes the letters, I don't know if they're one and the same person, or they're different people. How long are they going to continue to do that before they start imposing some charge? They're going to wake up and look around and say, you know, this is really, especially if you're doing a significant number of these, this is really taking a lot of employee time. At what point in time are they going to come to you and say, you know, we got to add something else to this? Is that unreasonable to
That is
suspect
not-
that's going to happen?
That is not unreasonable to
Okay.
suspect that it happens, but I guess you have to put a value on people's safety.
Well, I understand, but I'm trying to get to the actual cost of what we're talking about here. Is Ms. Wilson, who administers this program, is that her sole responsibility with the town?
It is not.
What else does she do besides just that?
She is a grant writer, I
Okay.
believe, and
Okay.
I'm not sure what everything that she does.
This program initiated in Blackstone, if I'm reading right here, on April the 1st, so we're basically 6 months in at this point. How many properties have been inspected? You got any idea?
Oh, I don't know.
How
I
many,
would
do you
say-
know how many they do a month or a week or anything?
I do not.
Actually, we could ask Ms. Wilson to come. and-
Yeah, well, that's fine.
That.
The other thing I'm a little curious about is, and this is kind of following up on Ms. Stinson's question, it says in the first paragraph of this handout, all inspections are made with the rental units vacant and clean. Upon approval, the inspection is good for 4 years. Now, let's say, for example, I have the inspection done, I rent it to a tenant, the same tenant's in there 4 years. Do I have to have it redone in 4 years? Because it's been suggested that the same person can stay in there 15 years and you don't have to do it,
They're only doing them when the property becomes vacant.
regardless
Yeah,
of
we
how long they stay in there.
Yes,
Yeah, we
because
already
they
covered that.
assume that you're doing your own inspections and.
We do, just as you do. But every time it becomes vacant, let's say you have tenants who basically stay a year and they leave, a year and they leave. So you're talking about doing this essentially every 12 months.
No. The inspection is good for 1 year.
The inspection is good for 4 years.
Okay.
If the tenant moves out, you do not have to have that property inspected again for 4 years.
Who's going to keep track of that?
Well, the town, I don't know how they're gonna
Who's
do
going to
that.
keep track of that with all the, there are hundreds of rental properties in Blackstone, even more in Blackstone than in Crewe.
We will have Ms. Wilson, what we can do is
All right,
schedule a
okay.
learning workshop, bring Ms. Wilson in if she's willing to come to talk to those issues, the town perspective.
And I'm assuming, one other thing I see on here, which frankly I think is illegal, and this is on the last page, tenants will need to bring in a valid ID, don't have a problem with that, a social security card. If you're not an American citizen, you don't have a
I
social
don't set
security
those
card.
plans, I don't set those guidelines for the town.
Well, I'm just saying, I don't know who drafted that, but I think that's illegal.
I believe that's just the town of Blackstone. Is that right? Wendy?
Yes, it's the town of Blackstone.
Yeah, well, I think that's illegal. I don't think you can legally do that.
Okay. Mr. Wheeler, do you have any questions?
Dominion Power does utilities for the town of Crewe. Are they gonna let us pay them $20 to keep the electricity on? I presently have to take a generator to work on my building.
Good point.
Good point, yep.
And I don't hardly think they would do it.
You're right, because we fall under different, they have their own electrical plant in Blackstone, correct? So that would be,
Yes.
so that would be totally different for us.
We have some properties in Blackstone that are under Southside Electric. And we have the utility, we have the utilities turned on.
Okay, they can do that, Southside will do that for $20?
I don't know, no, they won't do it for 20.
Okay. All right. Your landlord, ma'am?
I'm not a landlord, but I'm a resident of Crewe.
Okay, let me hit the landlord first, and I'll come back to you. Can I do that? Ms. Jones, you have a rental property here in town, did you want to speak to this issue?
Yes. I don't want to speak about what you all are talking about.
No,
I have a separate issue.
Yeah, we'll save that for later, then. We'll save
Okay.
that issue for later. All right, Ms. Eddy?
You know my history a little bit. I was a real estate agent for 32 years, licensed 32 years, actively sold for 22. Sold multi-millions of dollars worth of real estate and have managed hundreds and hundreds of properties. I'm just curious, Carolyn, what you do to screen your clientele. When you rent, I'm just curious as to, because I believe, as I'm hearing all of this tonight, that there's a lot of responsibility that's incumbent upon the owner of the property or whoever manages the property to be selective about who they rent to. And when you are selective to who you rent to, then you minimize all these problems that we're talking about, I know, because I've been a landlord. So you can choose to be the kind of landlord that just hands over the keys to anybody that walks up to the door, you
Jim,
know,
Jim,
or,
question?
yeah, I just asked her.
Okay.
Well,
Did you not hear it?
I don't know what,
Give her a chance to answer.
I don't know what my screening process has to do with this, but I'll tell you what it is. We get an extensive rental application. We get approval from them to run their credit through Equifax, and we do a rental history check. Our requirements is they make 3 times the amount of the rent, so they have to provide us with photo ID and proof of their income.
Very good. That's what I was asking, because myself, that is also what we did. We always ran a credit report, I still do, run a credit report and do the proper things to exercise some nominal amount of judgment as a landlord, and many, many of the problems can be avoided. So, and I do think that we have lots and lots of landlords in the world that do not exercise that kind of judgment, and they get hurt, they get burned. So, I guess maybe that's a
They
comment.
do.
Rick.
Any other,
But that has nothing to do with.
any other landlords that I might have missed that have a question?
I would like to add to what she said, in the town of Crewe, our house is kind of like monitored by that grant. And we have to put lower moderate income people in the house.
Yes,
And
ma'am.
that's what's causing all of our problems.
We're gonna get to your issue.
Okay.
And you had a question?
I do. I have a just for the council.
On this
Who-
issue?
Yes. I live in a house that the person that, I believe you own that house.
I don't know.
That's right beside me.
I don't know.
Maryland Avenue.
Which house do you live in?
I live at 507 Maryland Avenue. I believe you own the house that's right beside me.
Who occupies it, do you know?
I don't know
Where
their
it is.
names.
Okay.
But my question is I've had to have my house exterminated, and that's never happened to me before. And I have 4, the property that you own beside me has 4 tires in the front yard. And they have weeds growing out of the gutters. So how am I protected against that?
What address is that, ma'am?
507 East Maryland Avenue.
That's the address with the tires.
That's the address that I live at.
Okay, what was the one with the tires? Ben?
It's to the left of me.
Probably 509.
I'm trying to
Am
figure
I
out.
protected against that in any way? Do I have any rights?
Please make a complaint.
Exactly.
And then,
Exactly.
and that's why I'm trying this.
We have a complaint. I'm gonna talk to this a little bit too. 509 East Avenue. Any other questions, Ms. Davis, on this
If
issue?
you have any insight in it, that would be, if you have any insight in that, that would be great.
Well,
Because I mean, if I tried to sell my house, I don't know who would buy it.
we have had people call us at our office and tell us that there were issues going on in properties that we manage, and we try to address that. Also, the town.
I wouldn't know who to call.
The town of Blackstone has ordinances that prohibit cars that aren't licensed, grass that's too tall, and things like
Okay, ma'am, you had a question on this issue?
So where would we go to complain?
Well, it depends on what it is. I would go to the landlord first, depending on what it is. If it's an inoperable vehicle, we do have an inoperative vehicle ordinance that we
Well, that and about the house, about the grass. So I have been to the town
Yes, ma'am.
when we walk over there.
Well, we have a grass
I didn't
cutting
say
ordinance
without
right
that.
here.
What's your
It's
address?
run down.
203 Guy Avenue. Yeah.
It's typical for a landlord to charge or receive a security deposit, right? Is that
Yes.
typically 1 month's rent or first and last?
that. Typically 1 month.
So in the event that a tenant were to leave and leave the landlord holding the bag with all that, they'd be entitled to keep that security deposit at that point, correct?
If they have to notify the tenant within 45 days of any damages and what they are.
All right, are there any more questions from council or from the audience for Ms. Davis on this issue? With that in mind, we want to thank you very much for taking time out of your night to come here and address us and enlighten us a little bit as to how it works in Blackstone, particularly from your perspective as a landlord
Thank you.
and property manager. And we'll probably be in touch with Ms. Wilson to get the town of Blackstone perspective as well.
I think that there's always a lot of bugs to work out in any new program like this, but I think that this is a win-win for everybody involved.
Thank you.
Thank you so
Thank
much,
you for your
Carolyn.
time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, Mr. Stegall.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Baxter Stegoff from Tennessee Avenue. Mr. Mayor, members of council, with the vice mayor's consent, before you got here, Mr. Mayor, I distributed a small packet to the members of council. I want to speak briefly. Certainly the council is aware that I'm running for Commonwealth's attorney. This is not so much a stump speech as something I'd like to offer the town and its citizens if I'm elected. And that is, in my opinion, two of the most important traits of any public servant. I've been a public servant my entire adult life, are transparency and accountability. Each month, your police chief, and has been for a number of years, probably since Chief Abel sat in that chair, submit a report of its activities to this council for review as well as for citizen comment and question. Rarely, however, do the citizens have the ability to follow up on the status of those cases. Not that the citizens are concerned so much with how many stop signs got ran, but some of the more serious crimes that happen in the county. Now, I'm offering to the council and to the people of Crewe, if elected, to hold myself accountable to its people, the citizens of the county, and to the citizens in the town, because certainly they are citizens of the county as well, by offering to provide a monthly status report of the activities of the office of the Commonwealth's attorney. I'll also make an attorney from the office available at every meeting, certainly not asking to speak each time, but make one available if the council or if the council has questions from that office. I'm not going to hog any time of the council, but if the council has questions, and then afterwards certainly might meet citizens if they have questions. I've submitted a report. If you'll notice, I've created the county of Pickett. I've stolen the General Assembly's directives and made my own county. The purpose of that is to be able to offer a notional report that if it got left behind, someone wouldn't stumble along and think they were looking at crime reports from Nottoway and be alarmed with my fake numbers on there. But this is just an idea. It's the basic kind of thing I'd like to offer if I am elected, both to hold myself accountable to the citizens and to this council. These things can be, for the citizens that can't see it, it's number of indictments on the last grand jury term, number of indictments year to date that would not include sealed indictments. I think everyone can understand why.
Yes, I'd rather some folks go ahead.
The number of felony charges within the last report month, as well as the year to date, number of misdemeanor charges, and then certain highlights within those. If there's a homicide, if there's particularly aggravated assaults, DUIs are a misdemeanor that often attract attention, those sorts of things. And then if you notice on the second page, there might be a brief recap of particular incidents of note. And the point of this is not to subvert any of the power of the citizens of Crewe in their council meeting, but merely to offer this information. It's not being offered now. It has not been offered since I've been around. And I think it is a good way that this office, if I were to be elected, might hold itself accountable to the citizens, hold me accountable to the citizens, and allow you guys to follow up on the fine work that your police department's doing, see where things go once they get to court. So I appreciate it. If you guys have any questions, I want to be very brief. I don't want to hold your time. I know you have more important things to do.
Any questions from members of council, Mr. Visser? Mr. Abel? Mike? All right.
Thank you guys for your time.
Thank you,
Thank
sir.
you.
Yes, sir.
Once again, we understand since this is passed around that it is fictional, it's not.
Whoever gets it last, just give it to me or put it up here on the table. Ms. Jones? This is Mrs. Linda Jones.
I'm bringing my concerns to the town council because I haven't been able to talk to Mr. Walker when he was in office. First I said, good evening, Mayor, Vice Mayor, and Town Council members. I'm gonna read mine because I signed up on the little sheet that said 5 minutes, so I'm gonna read. My name is Linda Oliver Jones. I'm here with my sisters Evelyn Coleman and Angela Hawks and her husband. We are owners of 411 Liston Street. My parents built this home 55 years ago and have had water service since that time. Our father died in 1995 and our mom died in 2004. We have rented the home since 2005 and have never had any issues with the utilities. I don't feel we should have had to come to this meeting tonight. I came by the office a couple of times to see the town manager, Wade Walker. I called many times to talk to him. I was told several times, he just left the office, he's not here, or I don't know when he's coming back. After all of that, one of the ladies told me to leave my number for him to call me. He never did. I feel he just evaded seeing me or discussing this matter. I realized that he retired on October the 1st, but this was a long time before that. I placed one last call, and Nora told me that he said it is in the town audience that the owners are responsible for paying the utility bill for the residents. I read the audience and I fully understand it, but I feel there's a loophole in our situation. We signed a lease with Crewe Jackson on January the 8th, 2019. She told us shortly after that she had electricity and the water turned on. I went into the home and both the electricity and water were on. I always check to make sure the utilities are on before allowing a person to move in. On July 22nd, 2019, 6 months later, I received a utility bill in my home in Blackstone from the town of Crewe. I called to the town office to see what was going on. At that time, I was informed that the renter of our house, Crewe Jackson, had not made application to the town for water service. The town picked up garbage all that time, yet we were notified 6 months later about this utility bill. The water was turned off, I think somewhere around mid-July. Later, I was informed that when they read the meter again, she had used an additional 2,500 gallons of water. Apparently, she was still having someone to turn that water on, so the town took the meter completely out. Why are we required to pay this bill? I have the lease agreement that she signed, have receipts where she paid the rent, have papers she filled out with the grant office in South Boston to live there, have copies of her electric bills from Dominion Energy, have the eviction notice, have many text messages since that time where I have discussed this utility bill with her and who illegally turned the water on for her. She would not tell me who turned the water on. This is proof enough that she lived there. She kept telling me she was going to take care of it. I called to the office, town office several times checking to see if Crewe had paid to get the water turned on. The lady at the office told me that Crewe inquired about how much she needed to pay to get the water turned on legally. She said she told Crewe that she needed to pay $300 to make application, pay the bill for Liston Street, and pay another bill she left from another place she had lived in Crewe so that water could be turned on for her. We have several things that have to be considered here. You failed to notify us in a timely manner about this. You collected garbage the whole time, yet we were notified 6 months after the fact. I have lots of documentation that Crewe actually lived there. Crewe contacted the town hall about paying this bill. It is evident that she continued to use water after the water was turned off. As a result, you took the meter out. No, it's apparent that Crewe did not make application to live at 411 Liston Street, but she is indeed a customer of the town and she has a previous unpaid account with you. As stated in your town ordinance 74-22, the property owner shall be responsible for all the payments due for utilities. If this is true, how come the place where she previously lived didn't pay her unpaid utility bill to the town? Whether she made application to the town or not, I have enough documentation that she did live there. Of all that being said, I don't feel we should be liable for this utility bill. Crewe Jackson's illegal acts against the town should be her responsibility to pay, not ours. We are making the following request from the town tonight. do not hold us accountable for the utility bill or replacing the water meter. Number 2, put the meter back in place as soon as possible so a new renter can make application to the town and move into the house. 3, hold Bree Jackson liable for that utility bill, tampering with the meter, continuing to use water after water was cut off, and the cost, if any, to put the meter back in. Also, please be reminded that this property is under the Crewe renovation grant, and it has to be occupied in a timely manner after each renter is evicted or leaves at the end of their lease. Currently, she lives at 901 3rd Street with her parents. And one more thing I'm gonna add, she left her furniture in the house as well. Didn't take anything out of 3 keys on it. My brother, my brother-in-law, and myself, we moved 6 truckloads of stuff out of the house. She wouldn't move out of there. Thanks for listening to my concerns and allowing me to speak to you tonight. Thank you.
Is your contact information on your statement?
She lives at 901.
No, is your contact information on the statement? I'm gonna give us some town attorney.
Okay, no. My address?
Yes, ma'am.
I live in Blackstone. That's my home phone. And 298. 3 is my cell.
Thank you, ma'am. We'll be in touch with you.
Okay, thank you very much.
Is that everything?
That's just the ordinance, can ordinance, I highlight stuff in it that I read, this is your name.
That belongs to Mr. Seagal.
Mayor, what is the town's policy? Is it to keep delinquent tax bills, or delinquent water bills with the property or the renter?
Was the property, that's what I always understood, yes. It was the property, and if the renter doesn't pay, the landlord has to pay. That is the way I've always understood it. That, and I see that.
Paid a million.
Yep, landlord shaking his head yes in the affirmative.
Thank you.
So, right. But this is one of those special properties.
Oh, right.
And that's why I wanted to.
Right, well, the other property she mentioned too.
Right. Yeah. All right. Mrs. Yates, Susan Christian Yates.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thanks.
Hello, of course, you all know who I am, Sue Yates. There are those of you who are not pleased with me at this current time. This has been made abundantly clear to me. With that being said, and put out there for all of us to know and understand, I want you all to know with great clarity that I have this town's best interest at heart. About a month ago, I was quoted as saying that our town is a mess. Well, this is a fact. I understand that my openness was disturbing. Well, ignoring it is not an option. We cannot fix our town if we don't have real discussions about how to fix the things in our town that are broken. We need help from anyone that will give it to us, and that would include our county government. I want you to know that I love this town. I came here over 10 years ago with the intent of making this my home forever. Now, sadly, I am left to wonder if that remains a viable option. I don't want to feel unsafe and sad about the deterioration of what was once described as a beautiful and safe place to live. And it is a sad commentary that this is what many of our older citizens are feeling. Before I start with what I want to say tonight, I am going to give you just a little bit of background on myself, so that as you listen to me, you realize that I have a background in many of the problems you're having. I actively sold real estate for over 22 years, with a volume of sales that exceeded $40 million. This was achieved during a time when the average home sale was around $60,000. Additionally, I was part owner in a successful engineering firm that designed water and wastewater treatment facilities for municipalities. We also work with storm drainage. I have now sold insurance for over 12 years. I believe that my background should lay some credence to my thoughts, concerns, and recommendations. But the reason I chose to have myself put on this calendar this night is not because of anything I have just told you, but because I read our local newspaper. I was appalled to read that we are looking at a $25 million project to repair water lines and infrastructure in order to meet the specifications and the requirements of VCBR while they do their sadly needed renovations and expansions. I see this as a sad commentary in that these types of facilities are growing. It does not bode well to what is happening in our society. It has unfortunately come to all of us in our small rural community. With this being said, their demands and needs should not have been a surprise to anyone in this town. These piping infrastructure problems have been talked about for over 15 years, and this town and its management knew that these water infrastructure problems were a ticking time bomb due to disrepair and ongoing maintenance. When infrastructure is not properly maintained, it leads to a quicker corrosion of our systems. If the choice of our town leaders was to hold off for as long as possible, then at a minimum, the leaders should have been better stewards and much more proactive in quality maintenance of our infrastructure. There are many ways to ensure long life infrastructure. All this could have been done over time for a much lower cost. And now our citizens are going to pay the bill. Many of the problems that we are having today are the very direct result of a management hierarchy that chose to do almost nothing. Towns and cities have ordinances for a reason. They are not there to be ignored, but serve as a pathway to stay on, to ensure maximum lifetime usage to maintain our infrastructure. Hold on, something's mixed up. Our town manager recently stepped down. There are those of you that see this as something terrible. I do not. In fact, I see it as an overdue chance to make changes in this town that have been needed for a very long time. I will share with you just a couple of examples. On a personal note, I went to town hall and repeatedly complained about an abandoned vehicle that was left on the street, blocking our storm drains with piling up debris around the car. It took 3 years to get the problem vehicle moved. That same corner with the same storm drain is now being blocked by another abandoned vehicle. I asked, why? I was demeaned and asked, why was a stupid little car so upsetting to me? With this being said, I was recently told that there were 77 abandoned vehicle notices that were sent out at the same time. I ask you, what town this size should have 77 abandoned vehicles all at one time? This is indefensible at best. This was the result of no notices going out for a very long time, and then when they did, they were not followed through on, just like the car I just used as an example. You know, the one that sits on the very same street corner in front of the very same storm drain, with all the debris piled up on it. We recently had an enormous house fire that could have taken somebody's life. Because of the condition of the yard, the firefighter's path was impaired by the junk in the yard. The disrepair of that home and its yard has been going on for over 1 year. Today, it still sits there with all its junk impairing any safe pathway that our fire department could use if there was yet another fire. The only difference now is that the house has been burned up and will most likely get torn down. I believe that this town's management, or lack thereof, was to some degree culpable. The debris in the yard that was the beginning to the end game. I have now been told in writing that the house fire overcame the junk. In fact, I was even told that it was the hopes of the town manager that the insurance company would clean up the yard. This is laughable, in that the debris that lay in the yard prior to the fire was most certainly not the responsibility of the insurance company. There is still another house on the lot to be concerned with, and there is another house that sits next door. It is time to clean up the yard. The insurance company will take care of the fire and the remnants thereof, not the debris. It is not the responsibility of the insurance company to clean up a yard that was an unsafe, unhealthy mess before the fire started. I have to get a drink, guys. This house fire has had a big impact on this community in that it was a perfect example of the functional obsolescence that we are seeing in our town. This property and other properties like it serve only to be a nuisance. They cause good neighbors' properties to go down in value. They cause unhealthy conditions, and they lead to disasters like we just had. I feel a sense of sadness for our handicapped citizens that are forced to drive their electric wheelchairs down the middle of our roads instead of safe sidewalks. Our sidewalks have been allowed to deteriorate over the years with the excuse that they are the responsibility of VDOT. This would not be true. Last month, I was challenged by our mayor and our previous town manager regarding the sidewalks. When I stated that VDOT owned a very small portion of sidewalks, perhaps 10 blocks, I was challenged and told that I was incorrect. I want you all to know that I was absolutely correct. I want you all to know that I'm working from the same exact map that the town was given about 3 years ago. In fact, I will go a step further. The very same VDOT representative that gave the town a map gave me the same exact map. I could go on and on with examples, but it would only work to alienate me even further. With all this being said, myself, as are others that I have spoken to, are concerned about what the qualifications of the new town manager will be, since there is so much that needs to be done for Crewe. I cite the following problems. We have a major drug problem. We are developing a large crime problem. We have a major problem with an excess of unkempt rental properties. We have abandoned buildings that need to be taken down. We have sidewalks that do not even meet a bare minimum requirement to be ADA compliant. We have an abandoned car issue. We have fire department and EMS issues. Our infrastructure regarding our storm drains and sewage drains that are in need of help. We need our attorney to become more knowledgeable about the workings in the town. And we need our town attorney to get back to us quickly. We need economic development. However, this is impossible with all these issues to deal with. Plain and simple, we will not grow. Bringing these thoughts to a town council meeting in an open forum only looks like a way to complain, and this is not what I want this all to be viewed as. Rather, I would hope that I can be a part of the solution by coming up with ideas that I have obtained from many hours of research. I have researched grants, maintenance policies, developing programs such as historical grants, art grants, sidewalk grants, a neighborhood watch, and much more for this town. I even obtained a full-blown proposal to repair the sidewalks that could be repaired at a fraction of the cost of putting in new sidewalks. I have been putting together thoughts and research on how to reach out to those that are drug addicted. We need to create actions that will bring back a sense of community. But first I need to know that the town has not closed its ears and eyes and is open to the thoughts and feelings of a good old town. Now that I have briefly talked about some of the problems in this town, I would like to know what the qualifications for a new town manager will be. I have taken the time to list just a few of the qualifications that I believe our new town manager should have. First, a town manager, first and foremost, we need one that will be a good steward over the town. This involves many of the aspects of management and character. A town manager that wants to be a town manager is for openers. 2, we need a town manager with a vision. 3, we need a town manager that is strong and willing to enforce our ordinances and the kickback when residents complain about being forced to be compliant. 4, a town manager that is pleasant in his or her dealings. 5, a town manager that will not succumb to the good old boys. In short, we cannot have 2 tiers of justice in the town. What is good for one should be good for the other. And I'm going to bring up an example of what I think is one of the good old boys, was every rental owner in this town advised of this meeting tonight, or just Larry Williams? Don't answer the question.
Madam, you're here to talk to council, you're not here to hurl insults at individuals, or hurl rumor, or innuendo at individuals.
A town manager that will, okay, hold on, a town manager that cannot only write grants, but can see the importance of grants. A town manager must be excited about what they are embarking on. They must have the ability to multitask. We need someone that is good with numbers.
Thank you.
You're going to provide a statement, copy of your statement to the town clerk. We'll get back to you in writing.
I was told I have a little bit more.
And you've used about 10 minutes.
I was told I was asked to be put on the agenda tonight.
Very well, proceed.
10, we will need someone that is willing to be a trailblazer. 11,
Council is invoking the 5-minute rule, ma'am. If
We
you
gave
will-
you well beyond 5 minutes. Ms.
I was asked to be put on the agenda, which
5
allows
minutes
me
is the
more
time
than.
limit.
No, 5 minutes.
And we've gone well beyond 5 minutes.
Then I'll bring the rest of it to the next meeting.
If you would give a copy of your statement to the town clerk, we can get back to you in writing.
Not until it's done being read.
All right, any other delegations from the public?
That was not a delegation, it was, I was asked to be on the calendar. I was asked to have the time to do this tonight, or I asked.
You
that.
asked to have the time to do it, yes, ma'am.
Yes, I did.
Yes,
I
ma'am.
didn't do it as a delegation from the public.
Well, you're in that, fine. If you would give a copy to the town clerk, we will have it PDF to every member of council.
I will when
And you-
I-
And
when
you
I
will get a
have-
response.
And I will give it over when it is done being read.
All right. We now move to the consent calendar. Matters on the consent calendar are considered routine and will be approved by one motion. Any item can be removed from the calendar at the request of a member of council and may be voted on separately. You have in your packets the minutes of the town council meeting held on 9 September 2019, minutes of the town council work session held on 19 September 2019, the bill sheet and the additions. The
Mayor, I
additions-
move that we approve the consent calendar.
All right.
Second.
Have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Motion is carried. We have no town manager's report tonight. Town attorney's report.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. First, I have provided everybody with a memorandum detailing everything that I am doing for the town. Secondly, if there's anything that you all need, please just let me know and I will be glad to get back with you. Third, and probably most importantly this month on my memorandum, it lets you all know that we do have a court date on the Watson property, which is on October the 28th.
The Watson property is this property across the street.
Yes, so on that day is when we will be asking the court for permission to tear the property down. And then I've already arranged for our witnesses to be there as well.
Very good.
So if you all have any questions, let me know. And also, I noticed in continuing business or new business about debt collections, I have been assisting the town with collecting delinquent taxes. We have been very successful in that. I would say we have around, at this point, a 50% collection rate. So we're going to continue to proceed with that collection.
Does any member of the council have any questions for the town attorney? Thank you, ma'am. All right, mayor's report.
Mayor, before we go to the mayor's report, can you move item C to later on?
I can.
Perfect.
And if,
Under, yeah, we'll stick it under
Executive session.
executive session.
Falls under personnel.
Yes, but this is just a general statement.
Okay, very
That was
good.
just a general
Gotcha.
statement. All right.
Yeah.
Okay. The Department of Corrections has requested preliminary engineering report for the water issue. The $35,000 they provided will fund the PER. Their money has been deposited with the town of Crewe. Council needs to authorize her profit to conduct the PER at a cost not to exceed $35,000. You have a late addition in your package tonight. Basically the proposal from her profit for the engineering report. That money initially was to go for the larger grant. You will recall that they were going to provide that, but they have requested that we do the preliminary engineering report. and use that money for that. And that was communicated to Wade and to Mike Wilson.
Do we bid that out?
We did not bid that out.
Any other engineering firms?
We did not, but that's because DOC wanted it fairly quickly. Now, if you want to bid it out, that's fine. I told them to come back with a proposal, and I told them it can't exceed $35,000, which is exactly what the price is.
Yeah.
I knew that.
I noticed that.
What is council's pleasure?
Mayor, I move that we move forward with Hart and Profit,
All right,
not to exceed 35.
I second.
all right. We have a motion and a second to move forward with the engineering report, not to exceed $35,000 in cost. Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, by like sign.
Aye.
You opposed?
Yeah.
Okay. I just want to make sure.
Still passed.
Before I-
We got you.
I got a little confused on that too. so.
Okay. The water rate study, Hurt and Profit are engaged in conducting a water rate study per council's request. Council needs to make a decision on whether it wishes to wean itself from providing water to state facilities, which means a loss of revenues, or to proceed and attempt to make the infrastructure improvements on its own in coordination with state agencies and passing the costs on to large consumers of water feasibly. It may be several months before the rate study is complete. If the council wishes to move forward with infrastructure improvements, it may be beneficial to advertise and implement large consumer and out-of-town consumer rate hikes as discussed in the 18th September meeting that was basically outlined in the letter from the mayor to council. Now, we could advertise the rate hikes, or we could continue to wait until the study's done. And I would assume that's probably your preference, but.
Well, I make the motion that we go ahead and advertise rate hikes for large consumers and out-of-town consumers.
Okay.
But, great, thanks to what?
Yeah, we gotta have the report so we know.
Well,
what they're gonna raise.
Do we have to know what we're gonna raise them to in
Yeah.
order to have the hearing?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Very well, then I withdraw the motion.
All right, the motion is withdrawn. So is it the consensus of council to wait for the engineering study, or to put an arbitrary number for a rate hike for the large consumers of water?
I'd say we wait.
All right, Mr. Reed?
I
Okay.
guess we have to wait till we have a number.
Ms. Bowman? Mr. Duffy?
Yeah, I said, wait till we get a number.
We want to get it right.
All right, good enough. We only want to do it once then. Very good. Town manager search. Council has been provided with copies of a Crewe town manager job description and a Tay City town manager job description. Council has also had discussion points to consider from the 19th September work session. Council Miskovic should have the results of the council survey to be shared. They are in fact in your package. Sometime tonight, council, and we'll probably do this in executive session after that, council needs to identify the preferred qualifications and experience desired and authorize advertising for a new town manager. Disregard item D, that check was in the mail and I didn't know it. So, you also have in your packet the VDOT crosswalk engineering plan. VDOT has provided an updated crosswalk engineering plan for the area discussed on Route 460 across from the railroad park. The town of Crewe will have to bear the cost. I have requested an estimate for that cost. I have received an email from Ms. Bryan, and she says that all of the work and costs associated with this crosswalk would be borne by the town. The final piece of work would actually be the painting of the crosswalk, and VDOT will perform that for $1,500 or less. So,
That's all?
yeah, well, we have to do the engineering work. So,
We budgeted 10,000? That's what I was gonna say.
Well, it was 5,000 for the crosswalk and 5,000 for kiosks,
Oh,
I think. But I don't mind using the whole 10,000 for crosswalk. If we
Sounds
get
like
this
it.
crosswalk done in 8 years after we ask for it.
well, 10,000 covered.
Almost $50,000.
For the crosswalk?
For some reason, yeah. Because Wade and I have been talking about that for months. Some about 50,000. I don't know why it's in the back of my head that, but you know, he's not here to say anything about it, but you know.
Did she give an estimate for?
She did not. See, we would have to advertise that. That's one of those, because she can't get into the private business, and we would have to advertise that, and an appropriate contractor, engineer would have to come forward and make a proposal. Now, I have a follow-on question. Is there any reason that we didn't decide to put the, I mean, y'all were discussing this before I came here. Is there any reason we didn't didn't put the crosswalk up there where the stoplight is, where you could possibly get one of those green and red men signs, and then build a sidewalk down that.
Well, it would involve building a sidewalk, and that hill's pretty steep, I believe. So they're right next
Well,
to
you
the
got a
railroad
safety
museum.
concern, got a good safety concern, all
Right.
too.
So you have the, right at that sidewalk, it's flat, but then it goes up on a hill,
Right.
and they have the fence surrounding the railroad museum, so it should require some.
What if we got a ramp though? I mean, we have a ramp, we could, somebody in a wheelchair could go up it.
Well, it's more about being able to walk across it without,
Okay.
I don't know, we'd have to, walk it and see.
Forgive my ignorance, but what does a crosswalk do where it's worth 10 grand or 15,000? I mean, I walk across there with the kids.
Yeah, I wasn't on 8 years ago when
All the
y'all
time.
decided that, but
I believe the
It's a safety
crosswalk
hazard.
is designed as a safety hazard primarily, for safety
To
reasons.
increase.
And I'm not being facetious, but how does it make it safe?
Well, because
Just
it's.
lines painted on the road?
Well, and it's also
You'll
signs,
have
on
the
either side of
lines,
the
you'll
road.
have you'll have.
Can we not put a sign up for
handicap
less than-
access off the sidewalks, and then you'll have various state signs that we put up. I would assume,
We
you never
can't put-
assume anything.
We can't put signs up for less than 10 grand? It says crosswalk? I don't know, I mean, it just sounds
And
ridiculous to
painted?
me,
Yeah, I
honestly.
mean-
Yeah, me too.
$1,500.
Yeah, we know how much that is.
That all depends on VDOT regulations, because it's 460.
It's VDOT property, and the sidewalks are VDOT right away.
I mean, personally, save a stop, unless it's a stoplight, nothing's gonna be safe across 460.
I don't see it being
And
operational.
I'm not, because if you've been through Greenfront Furniture in Farmville, the traffic don't stop all the time for them. They're supposed to, but they don't. I mean, I'm just, $10,000.
Well, that's what kind of led me to the lights too. All right,
Well, it's
y'all,
$10,000 budgeted,
yeah, that's what was budgeted. So you wanna-
1,500 to paint.
Yeah, but the engineer.
Oh, so-
When you
but-
hear the word
Bill Abel,
engineer,
yeah,
you're not getting out of there for
bucket
less than 10
brush.
grand.
Right, yeah.
So do you wanna hold off on this for later? Table this discussion? Or-
I reckon we need to find out how much it's gonna cost.
Well, that would mean.
Well, the engineer-
We gotta pay to find out.
Oh, jeez.
You have to request for proposal.
Let's hold off until the new town manager, because I don't want to put all that on
All
the
right,
town clerk.
is
Thank you.
concur?
Yeah,
Yes.
I agree with that.
Concur, okay.
I just got one question. What are they gonna put there with that? Footbridge going up and over?
Sounds
That's
like
a
it.
crosswalk.
Was it
With
gonna
that
be?
price, it
White
should be-
lines going across.
I bet we could build our bridge going over it for less than 10 grand. And then we don't have to ask VDOT, right?
Yeah, we have
Still got
to ask.
still got bridge,
For
still got-
something across there.
Because you got
across the
height
road.
restrictions.
All right, one item not on the, on my calendar, the chief has implemented a new procedure. He's got complaint reports in each of the police cars. Each of the officers have copies, multiple copies of ordinance for inoperable vehicles, cutting grass and removal of weeds, allowing mobile homes to be used for dwellings outside of parks, for example, or prohibited, and also garbage cans and whatnot.
That's talking about, the one with mobile homes, you're talking about RVs, correct?
Well, yeah, you can't live in it if it's
Yeah.
not, yeah. The bottom line is that the officers are patrolling with these now, and they're stopping, and when they go, they're writing a report, they're giving them the ordinance, and then they're making them sign a piece of paper that they did in fact receive the ordinance and were given proper notification.
Great idea.
The house down here that burned up, the people next door basically moved all their junk next door to the new rental there.
Yeah,
They've already been.
another rental.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What's been cited, it's been cited, and they will be cited for every 7 days until it's cleaned up. And they're fairly aggressive on this right now. You will notice an increase in ordinance in the police report.
Did you say it was cited every 7 days?
Every 7 days you can cite them, yes.
Okay, and when they're cited, what are they doing?
Well, I
Give
mean,
them a summons, go to court?
yeah, violation of ordinance. Uh-huh.
Okay, that's what I wanna know, if they're going to court, because the judge can stop it, like what?
Yeah.
Are they issuing that to the landlord as well?
I don't know. I think it's going strictly to the owner or the resident at this time. Yeah, all right. Committee reports. Finance Committee, Ms. Stinson.
We're doing what we're supposed to do.
All right, Personnel, Mr. Reed.
We're gonna have a lengthy discussion about the town manager position. Other than that, there's nothing to report.
Okay. Community Development, Ms. Bowles.
Nothing.
Very good. Continuing Business, Strategic Organizational Assessment, Councilman Miskovic.
Thank you. We spoke at our special meeting a couple weeks ago about the strategic organizational assessment that Berkeley Group reviewed for us. Have we had any more opportunity to think about that, or do we want to table that again?
I would table it. I don't think, you're talking about the thing that Amherst paid big money for?
Right.
Yeah, I read it, I looked at it. Frankly, I don't think we're at that point yet. Why don't we wait till the new town manager comes in? There might be a grant out there for that kind of thing, because I'm just one guy talking, but I mean, I don't see us spending $25,000 for that.
Okay. Any other thoughts?
Agree with. Thank you.
Okay, we'll table it.
All right. Land bank meeting, Mr. Miskovic.
You have a report in your packet regarding the land bank meeting that the vice mayor, the mayor, and I attended on 9/26. Notes are at the top. Then I reiterated the benefits of land banks, some questions for the town attorney, that the town attorney has since answered for me. The legal definition of blight is pretty much straightforward, or pretty much all straightforward and all encompassing. So the way I read it, blight means any area that endangers the public health, safety, or welfare, or any area that is detrimental to public health, safety, or welfare because of whatever reasons. So that's pretty broad, because it's a pretty broad interpretation, especially for welfare. As you know, the federal government does all of its programs because of the general welfare clause of the Constitution. So welfare means quite a bit, or can mean whatever we want it to mean, within reason. As long as we can justify our reasons. Is that accurate? Okay.
Yes.
So,
Well, it's pretty subjective. We would have to have obviously some objective reasons behind it, so yes.
perfect. So we got that, pros and cons of, okay. So the town attorney's come back to me on all that. Action steps. With staff support, the mayor and town attorney, like we had mentioned earlier, complete a roadside assessment of all property in town, given that definition of blight and whatever your interpretations of blight are. And then send to the Economic Development Committee a list of property address, whether the property is vacant, occupied, or unknown, whether the property is residential, business, or unknown, whether the property is owner occupied or rented, an initial assessment of blight, moderate blight, or severe blighting. So then the Economic Development Committee can go through all those steps that you see written there, and we can move forward with understanding the blight through because we have the data at hand and moving forward. Thoughts?
It's working pretty good in these four.
So it hasn't started where are we? Back to the first page. They've been established. The one, Richmond has just started the process, so they just took the title. They haven't done it, and most of the lots in Richmond are vacant lots. So there's nothing on them, so it's easier to sell. It's Richmond, so property goes like that. Chesapeake, I believe, goes well because they've invested $1 million. Roanoke is going with nonprofit and Habitat for Humanity. Danville, I believe, is starting to work pretty well. I'll ask them when I see them at the BNL conference tomorrow morning. But it's a relatively new concept.
Vice Mayor, do you have any comments? You were in the meeting.
Yeah, well, it was very informative. She did a really good job of explaining how land banks work. We're gonna come back to the big question, funding.
Who's gonna buy it? Is the private property, correct?
Well, and those are things that the Economic Development Committee will talk amongst ourselves and figure out and report back to council, so that we don't have to discuss in council
Yeah.
meetings.
Any questions for Mr. Miskovic from council?
Okay, and your thoughts on would you and the town attorney be willing to go through block by block and,
I don't know, the town attorney's got time.
okay?
I will do it.
Okay.
I can schedule some time, or if there's a more cost-effective way,
I think,
you all want to.
The best way, maybe if you do it and then anything questionable, just mark for the town
I
attorney.
will get
so-
the police car on a shift and we will go all over town.
Perfect,
Okay?
that'll work.
Okay?
Cassie makes too much to go house to house.
Yeah.
I can,
They-
but.
they probably- I get paid about $1 a day, so. All right. Norfolk Southern Building Grants update, Councilman Miskovic.
Yep, turned in that grant. I have a report I'll pass around. It's a 61-page report created over the last several weeks on basically everything, and I'll send it out via email too. I had to take a couple days off work. But it basically describes everything in detail, what we are looking at and partnerships involved and the electric support that we got